And I'll start this one. This is my interview with Robert Genson for my History of Michigan class. It's not videotaping you, I just want to face the microphone towards you. When and where did you grow up, Bob?
Well, I was born in Amber, and I'm still in Amber, so I didn't get very far. I was born on Dennis Road, across from the Merrick Farm, 1940, and during the Depression and even up until 1940, my folks moved all the time. They moved every year, so my sisters probably went to more schools than most kids ever saw. By the time I went to school at 5, they finally settled in Hamlin, and I started school at Nordhaus, which was a new school for a country school. It was built in 1940, so the same age as me. I was excited about that. But it was the newest country school in Mason County, and that's where I started school, and we lived on Jabavi Road, about a mile north of Hamlin Grocery, and I lived there until I got married. So that's where I was raised, on Jabavi Road in Hamlin Township.
What were your parents like growing up? Or
What were my parents like?
Who were your parents and what were they like growing up?
Well, my parents, my dad's name was Warren, my mother's name was Mary, and her maiden name was Garland. They were married in 1932, and my dad worked a WPA during the Depression. He quit school at 16, didn't have any education. My mother quit school at 16. So they just worked menial jobs. During that time, Dad got a decent job during World War II, and after about 1950, he went into the building trades. He was a carpenter, and he worked as a union carpenter for years, and then he had his own business for 30 years after that. So, and my mother went to the watch case to work in 1946, and she worked there until 1956. That was the only real time, well, other than she did a stint at the canning factory when she was really young, but watch case was about the only time she worked outside the home in those years, and but they were just common folk. Yeah.
How about your siblings? How many did you have?
Well, I had, when I was born, I had 3 older sisters, and my sister Evelyn was 7 years older, my sister Helen was 6 years older, and my sister Alice was 3 years older. And that's the way the family was until 1962, and my parents thought they had to have another baby, so they did. And I was the baby for 22 years, and then Sally was born in 62, so there was quite a stretch there. They were going to have 2. My mother had a little trouble with Sally, so the doctor suggested she not have another one. All the girls were married. The older girls were married when Sally was born, so Sally was always like a niece to me. 22 years difference. I got married a year after she was born, and Sally kind of grew up with her nieces and nephews. So that's what the family consisted of. I had actually 4 sisters, one very young.
We'll continue the family tree then. How about your own kids?
My own family?
Yes, your own.
Yeah, my wife and I got married in 1963, 59 years ago this July.
Nice.
And we had a youngster, Robert Jr., or Robert II, in 1965, and he died in February 66. He had about 4 months after he was born, he had a blood clot in the brain, and, he died in February. And then Tim was born in April 3rd, 1966. And Annie was born in Tim was born in 67. Annie was born in 68, September. And so that's what our family consisted of. Tim and Ann and the one deceased.
How does it feel to have a wife and 2 kids that are teachers?
Well, that's kind of a different thing too. My wife went back to school when the kids went into college. Tim went to college in '86, and Sue started her teaching degree in '86 to study for it. And then Annie graduated in '86 and went to college in '86. Yeah, she graduated in '86. Tim graduated in '85, so he was a school a year before Sue went to school. So I had 3 in school at once.
Wow.
Everybody got smarter but me.
What did you? Oh, you can keep going.
Go ahead. Well, they just Tim and they all got out about the same year, 90, 91 in there, and they all got jobs. And my wife taught at Manistee for 15, 16 years. Tim's been at Mason County Central for 30 some odd years, and he is now a counselor at Cove, and have 3 grandchildren.
We won't touch base on them. That's a lot of family members to talk about. Since we talked about their careers, did you have a career in mind growing up? Or
in mind growing up, oh yeah, I wanted to be everything. Every time I went to a movie, whatever that guy and the star was, I wanted to be. But I never went to college, and I started out working at the Dow Chemical and Harvison Walker and so on, but I just didn't like that. And so I got into retail at Sholey & Thompson in Scottville, where I worked for 10, 12 years. And then I bought my own shoe store in Ludington in 1978. We ran that till 1986. And then I started selling tractors and selling cars, so I worked in retail most of my life. And probably not a good idea, but it was interesting, and I liked working with people, and it's fine.
how did you start becoming a sports announcer?
Well, that was Tim was athletic director at Mason County Central, and he had Tom Van Buren did the boys basketball, and George Wilson did girls basketball. Every once in a while they were missing, so he asked me to fill in. That was in the early '90s. And so whenever George or Tom couldn't make it, I filled in. And then when they started retiring, he said, do you want to do it? And so I ended up doing everything, JV and varsity football and girls and boys basketball and track. And so that's how it started. It started as a temporary fill-in, and then as they left, I just took it over. So, and still am.
Now, I'm really curious. You've been alive for so long. That sounded rude, but what major events were you alive for that really stood with you?
Well, I was born in '40, so I was born just as World War II was kicking into gear. I don't remember much of World War II, although I do remember my mother getting letters from her brothers who were in the service. She had 3 brothers in the service, and what I remember is she'd open the letter would be full of holes. And they censored a lot of this. If they mentioned any place where they were, they'd take that out. So if anybody else saw the letter, they couldn't tell where they were. And that always kind of intrigued me that my mother was reading letters with holes in them. But I remember that. I remember things happening in '44, '45. But I don't remember a lot of detail about World War II. Although I remember my uncles coming home, and my dad had a brother in the service, and my mother had 3 brothers in the service. So I remember coming home and having their uniforms on. And then my Uncle Leo, he was in the Navy, And in 1945, when he got discharged, he brought me a official Navy uniform, size whatever I wore at 5 years old, and I thought I was pretty cool. Every time I went to town, I had to wear my sailor outfit thing. So, and of course, the Korean War I remember very well, and the Vietnam War, the wars, and the space program. That was exciting. I remember sitting with Ed Sanders and Donna Sanders, Sue and I, watching the first step on the moon.
Well, that's fun.
So you remember those things,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's a lot of things. I remember when the kids were small, I made an effort so that they could see some presidents, and we saw Jimmy Carter in person, saw Jerry Ford in person, and I guess that's it. We saw Jerry Ford in Holland in a parade, and we saw Jimmy Carter at Plains, Georgia, leaving church one Sunday when we were on our way to Florida. So it was kind of exciting for them to see a president. And I don't know. I used to make sure that we got to some professional baseball games in the summer, and that we took several trips so the kids could see the country, you know. And but any major event in the 50s and 60s and on up till now, you experienced.
I know you're into reading archival newspapers.
Yeah.
When did you get into that?
Well, that's when I got computer savvy, which I don't do everything. But Ludington Googled a bunch of daily newspapers, and they have them online. Can't copy them, but whenever I find something that I want copied, I can go to the library and look it up, and look the paper up and copy it. And it's interesting. I go back into the logging era and into the World War I era. I might hear something historical. For instance, Bonnie and Clyde were killed such and such a date in 1934. I'll go into a Ludington paper and see what Ludington had to say about it.
Yeah.
You know, and that sort of thing. And you run across some very interesting stuff that kind of amaze you locally. You know, that you say, oh, gosh, you know, we think of the times today being kind of rough and tough and everything. With shootings and everything, but my God, in the 30s, unbelievable. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I kind of, because of the place that I caretake for the last 20 years, is part of the logging history of the country, or of the county. I try to do a lot of research through the paper on that place, and I found quite a few things. So that's kind of what I do with that archive of the paper.
I was speaking with your granddaughter today, and another hobby of yours is singing and playing the keyboard.
Yeah.
We wanted you to do a little keyboard intro for this video.
You did.
But would that be another hobby of yours?
Yeah, I have. I started that about 5-6 years ago. I look up chords on the internet in words, and I learn the words and learn the chords and play and sing.
Have you always been a fan of music growing up, or?
Oh yeah. I've always been enjoyed music. Yeah, and dancing. And when we were younger, we used to seek out. When I was young, a teenager, there were still dances in the town halls, and you could find a dance somewhere every Saturday night. And then Johnny opened up, and he kind of took the whole young crowd over there, and even though the town halls and the townships had their dances, it was pretty much older people. But yeah, I have enjoyed music my entire life.
Did you have role models in Hollywood, I guess you could say, growing up? Did you look up to anybody?
Well, I have probably, I don't really The only thing I remember in the 1950s, the Lyric Theater had a Saturday matinee where they showed B westerns. Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, Johnny Mac Brown, Lash LaRue, Whip Wilson. I mean, you got a little button. If whoever was starring, you got their button, and you got something else. My mother was a saver. She saved all my buttons. But I really never had a favorite cowboy that I could say. But what I was going to say when I started blabbing here was that since I started watching Turner classic movies, I have some old movie stars that I really go out of my way to see. I never thought much of Humphrey Bogart, but I enjoy his movies. I enjoy Cary Grant. And Cooper, I don't, not so much. But yeah, I probably, and John Wayne, he never impressed me any. But there's some in the last 20 years, some old Hollywood stars that I've learned to appreciate what they've done and what they do. Female, I like Katharine Hepburn. Oh, Spencer Tracy, I enjoy him. And Debbie Reynolds, I loved when I was 13 years old, so I always liked her. And
it's interesting to talk to you about older Hollywood actors because I've been meaning to watch more old Hollywood movies, so I know the names that you're saying, and compared to
see, to the 30s, well, late 30s and 40s, and there were some great movies. In the late 30s, that was just a prime time with The Wizard of Oz and Stagecoach. That one with Jimmy Stewart at Christmas time.
It's Wonderful
But
Life.
they were all in that era of 38, 39, 40. There were some great movies. Gone with the Wind was in there. And Clark Gable I've learned to appreciate. I never liked him as a kid. I thought he was just some slick movie actor. But he does all right.
Were you had sports? Did you root for people in sports?
Was I active in sports?
Yeah.
Yeah, I played baseball, softball. I didn't play any football in high school. And pretty much baseball and softball. I played some golf through my 40s and 50s. I never got very good, and I got arthritis real bad, so I just quit. And but I always enjoy. I'm a spectator. I'm great.
Yeah.
I love to watch golf. I love to watch football. Love to watch them all. I was never a basketball player growing up in a country school. I never played basketball when I got in town. So you never became much of a basketball player if you lived in the country.
Like movie stars that you've already mentioned, did you have sports players that you rooted for as a kid?
Oh, yeah. There's, of course, Babe Ruth. I've read a lot about him, and he was just kind of an amazing person, the way he lived his life terribly and was such a good athlete on top of it. Hated Ty Cobb. I thought he was just a puke, but the way he treated everybody. But Babe Ruth, I always liked Stan Musial. I appreciated Hank Aaron, Mickey Mantle. Always liked Mickey. Some of the Tigers back in this day, Cash at first, K-Line. That I think it was 61 team. That was a good team. Al Kaline was a real gentleman. I always liked him. Football, there was pretty much quarterbacks that I remember mostly. You don't remember a lot more than them, but I had favorites. I had but I do enjoy sports to this day.
Do you still support University of Michigan?
I hate to say this, my daughter went there, and I don't really care for University of Michigan. I probably root for Michigan State more than I do University of Michigan.
Now, I'm going to switch topics again. You brought up how you showed your kids Jimmy Carter and all of them as presidents. Did you partake in presidential elections growing up every year?
Well, I've always voted.
Yeah.
And I was in politics. I was a county commissioner for several years, from 92 to 2010. And I was on the school board at Mason County Central for 15 years, chairman of the board for 10. So I got involved in elections by running, which is everybody should do at least once.
Do you remember the first president you voted for? Or
Yep.
The election?
Excuse me. Yeah. Lyndon Johnson would be the first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because John F. Kennedy was elected in 60. I was 20. I turned 21 in 61. He was dead before the next election.
Okay.
So the first one I voted for was Lyndon Johnson.
Now, I want to hear what. Do you know anything that happened at the assassination of John F. Kennedy? Do you know where you were or?
Oh, I know exactly where
your
I was.
reaction?
I was on Ludington Avenue by Stearns Hotel, Stearns Motor Inn by the courthouse, and I pulled off on a side street and just gathered myself. I couldn't believe what I just heard, but I kept listening to the radio. But that's exactly where I was. I was driving down Ludington Avenue East by the hotel, and I heard that on the radio and pulled around and parked by the hotel. Because it really struck me hard. And I remember, for instance, 9/11. I know exactly where I was and what I was doing.
That was my next question.
And I watched live the first plane hit the Trade Center on TV, not realizing what I was seeing. The reporter that was doing another story said, "Oh my God, a plane just hit the World Trade Center." And I thought some guy got off course and hit it. And I had to do something at the courthouse. I was on the county commission at the time. And I went to the courthouse, and by the time I got to the courthouse, I apparently didn't have the radio on, which sounds funny. But I didn't take that first hit too seriously. I thought it was an accident. And I got to the courthouse, and I walked in the courthouse, and the second plane had hit. And I thought, oh my, we have something going on here. So then I came home and got the TV on and watched everything that day. But yeah, that was quite a disaster.
Are there any other events that you knew exactly where you were when it happened? Or
Yeah, I got to think about that.
Yeah.
You know, boy, there was something the other day somebody said to me, and I said, "Oh, I know where I was." And I really can't say. Like Walking on the Moon, we sat and watched that in it one evening. I can tell you a little side story of space.
Yeah.
In the early days when I was in Scottville, we had an organization called the JCs. We were quite active, young men, young businessmen, and we'd had some kind of a doings, and we were out at my house having a few beers afterwards, and there was, probably 10, 12 guys. And it was one of the missions to the moon was going on, and somebody looked up toward the moon, and there was a bright star by it, and they said, that must be guys coming back from the moon.
Yeah.
And about half the guys said no, and half the guys said, yeah, I'll bet you. And they were having quite an argument. And I said, well, I'll settle that. And I went in the house, and I called NASA. And I told them where I was and what we were doing, and would it be possible that we could see that spaceship? And they said no. So I went out and broke everybody's heart. Not everybody, because those guys.
There's a bet.
But yeah, we did that one night. Nobody believed I called NASA, but I did.
I don't believe you right now.
But I was surprised that I got an answer.
Yeah.
And they took the question.
That's funny.
But that was one of those things when you drink a little beer.
We've every single question I give you, you answer so many of my other questions that I've had, which is lovely. I have one highlight. It's what's your proudest moment in life?
My proudest
Your
moment?
proudest moment.
God, I gotta say, meeting that woman in the living room. She's probably made the biggest difference in my life of anybody in my life. I was kind of a nasty little guy, and I admit it. I wasn't very good. And after I met her, I cleaned my act up. And if I hadn't met her, I probably would have taken a lot different direction. So one of the proudest things is marrying her, meeting her, marrying her. Gosh, I don't know.
You probably
things at the time seem important, but as years go by, the gloss kind of dulls, and it doesn't seem so. You know, when I bought the shoe store, it was quite a big deal. You know, but now I wish I wouldn't have. You know, different things, and I guess one of the things I did was when I was raising cattle and farming, I really enjoyed that. I think that was. I was proud of that. I was raising cattle. I was doing things I never thought I'd do, like pulling calves and yeah, that was. I enjoyed the farming, and I'm sure there's some other things, but
it's a tough question.
like I say, when it happens, you think it's really important, and then it kind of the luster kind of goes away.
I have a whole section on Sue, and you mentioned briefly how you met her. Do you have anything else to say? What you'd like to say about her?
Well, I met her actually at the ski run at Ward Hill Ski Area. I think to talk to. That was the first time I really talked to her. First time I asked her out, she wouldn't go with me. The second time I asked her out, she, I guess, said yes just to get me out of her house. I had a friend named Pat Tyndall, who I had mentioned to him that we were going through Walhalla. It's four of us guys in a car, and I mentioned to him that I was trying to get a date with that Sue Dodge. Oh, he said, I know the Dodge family well. Come on, let's stop. Let's talk to her. I thought, Jesus, he knows me. He went in that house. They didn't know who the heck he was. But he got me in the house, and I got to talk to Sue. Asked her for a date, and she said, yeah, just to get rid of me. And
yeah.
So that's where it started.
How was, I guess when your kids were growing up, what did Christmas look like? Or what was one of your most vivid memories with them?
Well, that was Sue. She loved holidays and the decorating, and if it was up to me, the kids would have never had as nice of things as they have. She made the holidays. She made Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. In my family, I became Catholic when I married Sue. I grew up as going to the Trinity Evangelical Church, going to Sunday school on the Sunday school bus. My folks never went. Us kids always went. And through the whole growing up era, we went there. And Easter was never a big thing in my house. Just, it's Easter.
Yeah.
And when I married her, Easter was a big thing. She was Catholic. And, I mean, we did Palm Sunday, we did Good Friday, we did Easter. I thought, oh my God, I didn't know this thing was such a big deal. But that's the thing. Other than when I was growing up, the biggie was Christmas. Thanksgiving was big because my mother had a widowed father and an bachelor uncle that she always made sure that they had Thanksgiving at our place, but other than those two, Easter was no big deal, and New Year's Eve was not a big deal. My folks, I can't even remember them going out for New Year's Eve, But anyway, my wife made the holidays, and if it were up to me, the kids wouldn't have had as nice holidays as they got.
Let's transition to who taught you how to drive growing up?
Well, my dad was, he was, he figured you could do anything at any time. When I was 6 years old, he said he had a makeshift truck with a box on it, and he was shoveling sand in it. He wanted it moved, and he said, "Move the truck ahead." It was sitting there idling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I remember him putting this thing. Well, I got it in gear and got it moving, and I didn't know how to stop it. See?
Mm-hmm.
And I hit a tree. But that's he let me drive. I could drive when I was 11, 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And out in Hamlin, I was driving all over the place at 14, 15 before I got my driver's license.
Do you know what type of model car it was?
Yeah, kind of interesting story.
Okay.
My oldest sister got married in 1954. And in 52, when she graduated from high school, my folks bought a new car. Not a new car, they never bought a new car. They bought another car and gave her our 1940 Buick, which we had taken 3 trips in over a 3-year period, and it was a real nice car. And that was her car to drive. Well, she got married in 54, and she parked it behind our house. And I was 14, and I just couldn't stand it. I had to drive that. And behind our house out in Hamlin, you could take a 2-track road, and I could go over to North Mile and Middle Mile, all through the woods. And I did. And I used to have to haul gas home in cans because I couldn't go out and get gas at a gas station. But that's a 1940 Buick. I run around the woods and run around, and I started sneaking out to Victory Park and my grandma Genson's and different areas that my folks didn't know I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I always came back through the woods, so they thought I was just out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the 1940 Buick I run all over with.
Did you take any big trips in your
Yeah,
life?
I really have to give it to my folks. They saved hard and long. They had a plan in 1950 to go to the West Coast and back. And, of course, I can remember they were shopping for a camp trailer, an RV, and it was just, everything was too much money. So my dad built one. He was awful handy. And he built a trailer that slept 6 people. There were 6 in the family. And there was 3 bunks above, and there was storage below. It wasn't a trailer that you could get into, but you could sleep in the upper part, and then the bottom was storage, and in the center bottom, a table came out, slid out with benches to eat on. And then he had a tarp that covered the trailer that was double, and you could bring that over the eating area on some poles that he had rigged up. It was really quite fascinating. Mm-hmm. We impressed a lot of people on our trips. But anyway, he built that through the winter of 49-50. And that's when they bought the 40 Buick. It was the nicest car we ever had, but they wanted to buy something that would go and haul the trailer. And so and the other thing we did, my dad had an uncle who lived in Idaho that he'd never seen. He went to Idaho in 1900. My dad was born in 1910. My grandpa was 12 years old when his brother left, and he was 62, 63. So my dad and mother decided to take Grandpa along to go see his brother. He hadn't seen him in 50 years. We had a 6-passenger car. Grandpa made 7. I was 10 years old. So the 40 Buick had a lot of leg room in the back seat. And my mother took flour in a big flour tin about that high, about that big around. That was my seat. So I rode on a flour tin to the West Coast and back. But it was fun. Mm-hmm. We had a great time. We were gone for 6 weeks. My dad at the time was a baker at the McDonald's bakery. He was the night baker. And he asked for time off to take this trip. And old Mr. McDonald wouldn't give it to him. So he quit. Said, we're going to take this trip. He said, we've been planning to do this. My mother was working at the watch case. She took her 2 weeks vacation plus a month leave of absence. And we were gone from about the 2nd or 3rd of July until the middle of August. That was quite an adventure. And we went to my uncle's and stayed there 3 days. Grandpa stayed right at their cabin. And a little sidelight, that was in 1950. My grandpa died in March of 51, and Uncle Ben died in the fall of 51. So they saw each other within a year. They were both dead, which was good. So we went to the Pacific Coast and then came back. And my grandpa got sick on the way back. He got a diarrhea and he wasn't feeling good. So we went into Milwaukee. And I had an uncle. My dad had a brother that worked on the boats, and he met us. And he made sure Grandpa got on the boat. And so that's how Grandpa went home. We went around the straits and came down through Traverse City. We had 2 weeks left of vacation, so we stopped and picked cherries for 2 weeks. And the girls, and I never picked much, but the girls got enough money to buy their school clothes, and that was another fun experience. We camped right with the Mexicans, and that way we played ball at night. My mother was an everlasting pitcher. That was fun. That was quite an experience. And then in 1951, my mother had an uncle in Maine. That's where my grandpa on my mother's side was from, who owned a dairy farm. And in 1951, we went to Maine for 2 weeks and took the trailer car and took my grandpa to see his uncle, or see his brother, but he'd seen him off and on through the years. He used to take trips to Maine. But anyway, went out there, and that was quite interesting. He had a dairy, he had a bottling plant right on his farm, and he used to milk the cows, bottle the milk, and then put it in his Jeep station wagon, and then go down to the town. Had 2 shoe factories in it, and he would peddle milk. He had strawberry milk, chocolate milk, and he called it coffee milk, and it was just coffee with cream in it, and so on. And I went with him several times. That was interesting. And in 52, we took another trip to the east. So we took 3 trips right in a row. And my sisters graduated, my 2 older sisters graduated from high school in 52. And that was the last time we went. That was the last time the family was together. So, but that was nice. Those trips. The trip west was fantastic. I'll never forget it. I almost remember every day what I did. And but that was interesting.
How about when your children were born? Did you go on any trips then?
Oh, when the kids were little, yeah.
Or the
We've
most exciting one?
yeah. We took a spring trip 2 weeks. We kept them out of school 1 week, and 1 week's vacation they had. And we went to Charleston, and then we went up the coast to New York City. Oh, we went to Washington, D.C., New York City, went to Cooperstown, Baseball Hall of Fame. Saw a lot of things. A little sidelight to that, we were about ready to leave. My mother-in-law was in Florida, and she didn't take her car. She flew down. It was the first year she was alone. My father-in-law died. And we went to leave, and my car had a leak in the radiator. So I called her, and I said, it's all right if we take your car. That's fine. So we took her car. What she didn't tell me was she took the insurance off it for the winter. So we drove for 2 weeks with that car with no insurance on it. But we took other trips that we always, every spring, we took a trip, and in the summer we took and we went to, the kids went to Milwaukee Stadium, they went to the Cubs Stadium, they went to White Sox Park, they went to the Tiger Stadium. We got around quite a bit in the summer to the ballparks. And
are there trips that you'd like to go on or go see something?
Well, to be honest with you, I would like to take that trip I took when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
The same roads, the same places, and see how much difference it has made. And I have an album. My mother took all black and white pictures of that trip. And I can look at a picture and be at a place and kind of compare. See, I would love to do that. We wanted to do it in the last couple of years, but this COVID thing has kept us home, and maybe this year, I don't know. I got to do it pretty quick.
I hope you can do it. Sounds like a fun trip. You mentioned how Sue changed you for the better when you met her. How were you growing up as a kid? Were you?
Oh, I wasn't. I was the only boy and the youngest, so
Okay.
you figure it out.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I mean, I got things the girls didn't get, and they got mad about that. The girls never drove at 16, I did. The girls had to wait till they were 18. Dating, I did way before the girls, you know. But I was a little bit of a brat because of that. I'll admit it.
I have a younger
But
sister
she
too.
took the starch out of me.
Yeah, that's good. How about as a student?
As a student,
Yeah,
average.
average.
Could have been a lot better. I never took a book home through high school, and I passed with a C plus, B minus average. I could have done a lot better and should have. And 5 years after I'm out of high school, my folks said, "Well, if you would have wanted to go to college, we would have somehow, made it possible." Well, thanks, but anyway, that's over the bridge and down the stream.
I want to see how far we are in this. Oh wow, 41 minutes.
Huh?
41 minutes.
Isn't that something?
Really, I love the stories you're telling me, but I gotta make sure I hit everything. What was your first reactions of being a father?
Well, that was something, you know. That really makes you stand up and take notice. What are you doing there, Sparky? Yeah, that was, and it turned out bad the first time. But Tim and Adam are great kids. I guess I was more impressed when I had a daughter than when I had sons. It was something about being the father of a daughter really meant something to me for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, that's a great thing. And I was going to say, you're talking about things that happened in your life. One of the things that I remember when my grandpa Genson died in 1951. That was the first person real close to me that died. And boy, that was tough. I was 11. Well, I would have been 11 that summer. And Grandpa and Dad had gone to an auction sale on a Tuesday, and Grandpa bought in Australia they have them, they come back to you.
Oh, boomerang.
Boomerang. He bought a boomerang at the auction sale, and he gave it to me. He says, "There, say I never give you anything." And I said, "What's that? What's that do?" He said, "Well, I'll show you." And he threw it like that, and it went up, but it plopped off there. He said, "A boomerang doesn't boomerang." And anyway, that was the last time I talked to my grandpa. He went home, he got sick that night, took him to the hospital, and he was dead in 2 or 3 days. And that hit me hard. Now, my grandmother, on my mother's side, was killed in 1943. I don't remember her. I was too young. So that didn't, bother me. But my grandpa in 51, that really bothered me. So, and another thing that bothered me in 1948, we went on a school trip at Nordhaus, and my sisters were 8th graders, and they had a schoolmate. His name was Bobby Cox. And Mrs. Brown, the teacher, drove. My dad drove. There was like 5 carloads of kids. Went to Manistee and went through the paper mill. And on the way back, a car with Bobby Cox in it got in a wreck, and Victor, he got killed. That was tough. Yeah. That we drove right right after the accident happened, and Mrs. Cox was one of the drivers. She wasn't driving that car, but she at that time, we had an ambulance in Scottville and Ludington, and by the time she got there, no one had called an ambulance yet. And she got a hold of my dad and says, "You've got to take Bobby into the hospital. He's hurt bad." Dad says, "Oh, I can't do that." She said, yes, please. And she begged him, and he said, okay. So all those kids piled out of our car, and he put she and Bobby in the back seat, and away he went. Well, he died before they got to the hospital. And my mother tried to clean the car up, but we had Bobby's blood in our car for as long as we had it after that. An old Studebaker. And that was tough. He was a nice kid. And when I don't know how we got talking about death, but I guess things that happened to you that impress you.
Did you have other school friends growing up that you were friends with for a while, or had a big impact on you, or?
Yeah, through high school, I kind of ran around with the guys from Victory and Hamlin. Then after I got out of high school, I hooked up with guys from Ludington, and the guys I ran around with, one went to the service, one went away to college. They went all different directions, and I don't know. What happened to me in the later years, I reconnected with some old friends, and which was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And one old friend, I'd ask a niece. Well, she's not the niece. Her husband is the nephew of him. And I said, "How is Uncle George doing?" A couple years ago, I saw her at Wesco. She said, "Oh, he died." Oh, I said, "Geez, I didn't hear about that." He lived in Grand Rapids. Well, I said, "That's too bad." So I went to the funeral of one of my friends that both George and I were common friends with. And out of the crowd comes this guy, and he grabs my hand, and I look at him. He says, "George Andrews, how are you?" I said, "God, you're supposed to be dead. Your niece said you were dead." He couldn't believe that she'd said that, but I said, my heart jumped right out of my eye.
Yeah.
This guy is dead.
Why did she say that?
I don't know. I think what happened about the time I asked about him, she had George's sister. It would have been her husband's aunt. Her husband died.
Oh.
And I think she might have been thinking about him, maybe. That's the only thing I can think about. But
that would be crazy.
I said, "Geez, George died. I didn't know that," because most of the time people who lived here in their younger life, they come back here to be buried or have a funeral or service of some kind. And I never read about it or heard about it. Well, he was still alive, and he surprised the hell out of me out there. But yeah, in January 20, New Year's Eve, I told my wonderful wife, I says, "I'm making a promise to myself." I had 3 old friends that were not doing well. I said, "I'm going to make sure I see them at least once a month, maybe once a week." Within a year, 2 of them were dead. And I was glad that I did what I did. And they were happy. I mean, we had a lot of good times.
Yeah.
Take them for rides. And I mean, I was able to do what they couldn't do much because they were really sick. And I was glad I did that. And then the COVID thing kind of shut us in. But 2 of them died in the same month. One was 83 and one was 82.
You would just take them for rides where they weren't?
Well, I would go to old Bill would go there. He liked to play cribbage, so we'd set to play cribbage. But he liked to get out, and they didn't get out much. And so if they wanted to go somewhere, you just take a ride, I'd do that. And Carl really liked doing that, so we did that quite often. And Carl was kind of losing his thing. He'd be talking away, and all of a sudden he'd quit talking. And I would just kind of look at him. It was like he forgot what he was talking about. And then he'd start talking again, but it'd be an entirely different subject. And his wife said that he was having a little memory trouble. But he knew me, and in fact, I talked to him on the phone about 3 days before he died. And but anyway, that was something I did, and I was glad I did it because I reconnected with some old friends. And
now, what does a normal day like you or for you look like every day? Now,
today?
Yeah.
Now. do what I want, do what I take care of this property yet. That's kind of changed a little bit because the people that own it now live there, where before that nobody was there and I was free to do while I wanted to do it and when I wanted to do it. But now I'm dealing with a guy that's right there, so it's a little different. But I'm still doing that, so that gets me going every day. And like this weekend, I like golf, so I'm watching the Masters. I got my computer doing one thing and my TV doing another, and and we kind of take a ride a couple times a week, and she's always got a project for me to do. She watches that HGTV too much, and so yeah, it's. But life, you've heard the phrase "the golden years," and that's a pile of crap. And there's more golden years before than this, but you got to make what you can of it. So
I'm holding Sophie, who's been shaking her collar at us. No, her collar. I'm holding her collar right now. But I've heard a lot about the pets you had in recent years and possibly growing up. Did you have any nice pets?
I had. We had a dog named Mitzi. We got when I was 5 years old. Mitzi she looked like a miniature lassie. She was, I think she had collie in her, but she wasn't a full-blood collie. She was about half the size of a full collie. And we had Mitzi until I was 19. And my dad ran over in the yard. And that was almost as bad as Grandpa. I missed that dog. Because that was my life from the time I was 5 until I was 19. And through the years, I've had some special dogs. Dopey, back when the kids were little, he was a English Bull and Labrador mix. He was narrow at the hip and big at the shoulder, and he had a half of lab nose. He didn't have a pug nose like a bulldog, but it was stubby. He was a great dog, and he never chased any vehicle except the semi that went to the milk plant up here. That's the only vehicle he chased, and that's the one that ran over him. In the winter, he went out the driveway and slipped and went underneath the rear. And he was such a good dog. And then I had a dog, Sport, a chocolate lab that was a great, great dog.
I've heard about Sport.
I couldn't go when we took him in to get him put down. They said, you want to be with him when he goes? And I couldn't. I had to go in the car. Sue was with him. But I couldn't do it. He and I were together all the time. So. And that dog, Charlie, missed him like a brother. Because Charlie came here in 2011 and Sport died in 2013. And I used to let Sport out the front door, Charlie out the back door. Because Sport would never go on the road. And then Sport would do his stuff out there, and then he'd come around the garage and meet up with Charlie, and they'd both come in the back door. After Sport was gone, Charlie went and looked around that garage every morning for about 6 weeks. God, that was sad.
That's so sad.
He looked for him every day. Where is that darn dog? No. So anyway.
Well, let's see how far we are now. Oh, wow. We're getting close. Oopsies. What if, this is a tough question, what if any, would you do differently in life?
Oh, jeez. You haven't got enough time. I mean, I'm telling you, you think you made a good decision, this is right and this is right, but, there's so many things, there's a lot of things that are done different. Lots and lots of things, and I can't even go into them. But family-wise, I wouldn't do much different, but a lot of other things. Yeah. A lot of things.
Well, unless you have any other comments to make, and you're more than welcome to, that is all I have for you.
Okay. Is that enough?
Of course. I appreciate it.